I'm John Boyd, Associate Editor with the Journal of Commerce. We're here today with Paula Hammond, Secretary of Transportation for Washington State. And Secretary Hammond, I understand you just finalized a $590 million federal grant agreement for passenger rail, but it's in a freight rail corridor.
Right.
So the investment, what will it do for freight operations in your state and the Pacific Northwest?
Thank you. The agreement that we just signed is for the $590 million corridor, specifically of the Amtrak Cascades, but between Seattle and Portland, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Seattle, Washington, Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
And one of the most important aspects of that corridor is the partnership that we have with Burlington Northern Santa Fe and Amtrak, as we have been for over 10 years incrementally building passenger service.
Mm-hmm.
So we have some experience in this, which is why we were most interested and comfortable that that partnership was going to be sustained as we negotiated for additional round trips of service and speed and reliability commitments by the mainline rail. Mainline rail companies, Burlington Northern has a strong business model. They are responsible to their private sector shareholders as a private company, and they had to make assurances that whatever they negotiated with us for passenger rail service was not going to impact freight movement. Freight movement has been a little stagnant in Washington State on the rail lines just because of the economy, but we expect it will recover and grow. We know that improvements in a rail line, sidings, additional hardening, all of those things benefit both passenger and the freight rail movement. But we certainly in Washington State, because of our economy's linkage to global trade and our ports of Seattle, Tacoma, and in Vancouver, Portland area, we didn't want to impact that. So we're very carefully watching to make sure that commitments we make for passenger rail service and even the improvements we make to that mainline corridor don't negatively impact our freight rail movement and the ability for that freight rail movement to grow with the capacity that they would need in the future as well.
Well, in fact, that's one of the things I was wondering. It won't just not impede the freight operations, but it'll actually help it and speed some up, won't it? Because
well, I believe it will.
You're going to be adding some additional track that the trains can pass each other.
That's right.
And other improvements. So will it make it for more capacity on freight and faster freight deliveries?
Well, I believe it will when we're not there. So BN themselves already is expanding and making capital investments in their own corridor for the nature of their own business. And they have an expected growth rate with all of the ports along the corridor and the service that they provide for goods movement. But I think it's a partnership, and that's what's so good about it, is that our country needs a strong economy, strong freight movement. As we watch our populations grow, we know that we need to move more and more goods onto the rail line if we can. We're looking for our mainline rail companies to support that, and we appreciate that in this negotiation and this agreement, we're able to get assurances from Burlington Northern on the passenger performance, reliability, non-interrupted service that we need with our investment of federal dollars into the mainline rail.
Now, this is a north-south rail route. It connects Vancouver, British Columbia, a major container port, the port city of Seattle. So is a lot of the rail traffic that moves in that area, is a lot of it seaport related?
Yes, very much so. And we have a lot of maritime movement of goods as well, and intermodal connections at the port of Portland and Vancouver along the Columbia River. UP line picks up in Portland in the Oregon area. So we have a lot of goods movement. I think Washington State is the one of the most trade-dependent states, because 1 in 4 jobs relates in Washington State to transport of goods and movement for global trade. And so it's very important that our rail lines work, and we didn't want our program to do anything to impede that. And if possible, which I believe this investment will do, is actually enhance the freight rail movement in our state.
And how fast will the money flow? How soon will construction start?
That's the question of the hour. Administrator Szabo was here this morning with us at our meeting, and North Carolina is working on their deal today, on their agreement to tie up the performance expectations. We're looking for and have that money obligated. We're going to add then next the $161 million of the additional grant we got to have all funds obligated. We're hoping within this next week. Then we need the authorization for the money to actually flow. BN says they can start work this summer, and that's been our goal. Our eye on the prize was turning dirt this summer on our rail line, and so we're anxious, and we're going to needle everybody until we get the money released, and that's what we're good at.